Hello and welcome back to the Dance Principles United podcast. We are doing part two with Nate about his learnings from VeeCon conference that he just got back from in LA. I'm excited.
Yes. Like we were, as we always do, right? We got on last week thinking, oh yeah, that might be a quick podcast, and had way too much to keep going through. So broke it up into part two, but excited to get here and chat through it now.
Yeah, amazing. If you haven't listened to part one, if you haven't listened to part one, make sure you jump back into the podcast before in Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcast, and have a little bit of a listen because Nathan shares some incredible takeaways he had from that conference. But do you want to just give us, for anyone that's just joining us and missed last week's episode, a bit of a rundown of the event that you're at?
Yeah, so it's called VeeCon, run by Gary Vaynerchuk, who I'm a massive fanboy of, and it's
Fangirl,
a
fanboy.
fanboy. So it's evolved from what it started as like a sort of like a Web3 and NFT type conference, but he's really evolved it into more of a marketing and media and pop culture, sort of very business entrepreneur driven event. And so incredible lineup of speakers. It was in the LA Alive, their precinct where they hold the Grammys and things like that, which is where the main sessions and things like that were. But everybody from Nick Cannon, Will.i.am, who we'll talk about a bit. Flavor Flav was there. We had T-Pain performing on the Sunday night, and just all sorts of other incredible entrepreneurs and business owners, not just on stage, but also just out taking in the sessions as well. And this is probably something that, as much as I love your wife, and we always enjoy going to events together, I think sometimes when you go to these events by yourself as well, what it really made me do, and it was the same when I went to the first VCon, is that every room I was in, I would always turn to the person next to me and introduce myself. Is that sometimes when we go to those events together and with Beck and things like that, we do sort of as everybody does, you sort of just hang with your peeps
Stay
and
with your
whatnot.
stay with your posse. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so because I knew that there were so many people, incredible people in there, like I said, every session I sat at, every room I went into, I made sure that I was out there networking and introducing myself to people, which, I've picked up a load of contacts from the weekend. And look, let's be honest, I presume most of which I might not ever contact again, but you'll never know. You never sort of know the contacts you make where you're going to run into those people again, and when your paths might cross again, and where you might be able to help each other out, or start a new business venture, or any sort of thing. It's just amazing connections.
And just interesting conversations, right? You said you spoke to some guy that was had a really interesting business was it in India?
Yes, like one of the biggest solar panel producers in India. Just
Oh,
because I
that's got to be a
just
huge company.
yeah, it's going to be a
That's
really
a
big company.
very big company. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, and the person that introduced me to that guy was worked at a marketing firm in LA that takes care of all the socials for Lorna Jane.
Mm.
And so really impressive people all around the conference that, like I said, just making sure, and that's what we're so big on with when we work with dance studio owners, making sure you're getting out and improving yourself and getting to events and connecting with, just other dance studio owners, especially. You never know where developing any relationship as a business owner is going to take you, right?
Absolutely. And how those relationships might, improve your quality of business in the future. I think it's so important. But let's get down to some of the learnings. Who do you want to share? Which other sessions did you love that you had some great takeaways that you want to share with us today?
Yeah, look, obviously, Will.i.am is always a pretty cool cat, right? Always super interesting hearing from them. But hearing about those people that he's obviously started out as a musician and producer and all those things, but obviously has super mad business brain as well. But he, and I think there was articles about it all this week as well, I saw. But he was sharing his new, he's calling it an interactive AI radio driven app, but it's called
Mm-hmm.
FYI, or radio.fyi. Really interesting app. He was sort of on stage talking about that and giving basically a live demo and things like that. So, think about basically you're sitting there and you're listening to the radio or listening to songs through this app now, but you're hearing some sort of pop culture reference in the song, and you're like, oh, hey, hang on, I want to learn more about that. and you can just interrupt the radio mid-sentence and get the full background on that important piece of pop culture that the song's referring to. And then just really interactive, and I guess the language model that he's feeding into that's been sort of trained really well as well, and was sort of like
Mm.
picking up on certain sort of language conventions and things like that. Look, it was super cool. I think, as with a lot of this AI stuff, it's so in its infancy, but yeah, as you would imagine for something from Will.i.am, it looked pretty cool, right?
Absolutely. I was looking at it as well, and it's about that personal experience, and him talking about how he wants to personalize radio so that it's
Yes.
to the listener. And isn't that interesting, right? Like,
Mm.
that's what people want now. They want a personal experience. They don't want to be one of the masses. They want to have what they want when they want. We want on demand. We want, great customer service. We want people to get us and, know us. Yeah, I think that's such an interesting thing. He must have been an interesting person to hear speak.
Yeah, super, super interesting. And like I said, like anybody that's done as much as he's done, and like, he rattled off like some of the business investments that he made along the way as well. Was just, he's
It's
obviously
obviously
got a
clever.
pretty switched on business brain. And so, yeah, it'd be super
I
interesting to
want to
know.
know, what other businesses did he invest in?
Oh,
Tell
look,
me.
I knew you were going to ask me, but like that, like, and I can't
Now
remember
I've
straight.
thrown you under the
Now you've
bridge.
thrown me, but like they'll be like Twitter early on, and like
Yeah.
big, like he was. Yeah, I know Twitter was one of them, and potentially I think he may have said Uber, but I don't want to like say that for sure. But like big, big, big players that would have.
Ooh, OpenAI. Google
Uh,
tells me.
there
Live
you go.
Google tells me. Tesla. Beats. OpenAI.
There you go.
Yeah. There
Yeah,
you
that would
go.
have done pretty
That's
well for him.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, but he's obviously a very smart business person as well.
Yes,
Yeah, but being able to do that. Oh, yeah. I'm doing a live Google, and it's very interesting.
but not so interesting for a podcast.
No. Absolutely. So, who else did you feel like was incredible? What else did you take away? What other sessions?
Yeah, look, Nick Cannon, again, another person that's just super, super interesting. And I think I talked a little bit about him last week, but something that I was thinking about as well as I was re-looking back over my notes, just a couple of like little one-liners that he sort of said. I loved one. He said something like, "An idea without a plan is a hallucination." And that's like so
Mm,
important for what we do in business, right? Like, and don't get us wrong, like we're not the type of people that have like big detailed, like, 20-page business plan documents
absolutely
around
not.
stuff that we do. But when we want to put something together, when we wanted to put Dance Teacher Expo together, we got together, we came up with a rough plan of what we wanted to do, and then we got into the execution. But having that plan is super, super important. And something that I thought, like, he was coming at it from a completely different way. He was talking about he got cancelled a little while ago. Basically, I don't even remember, and I didn't really Google it, to be honest. But I do remember reading about it. He said something, and essentially it blew up online, and he got cancelled for it in inverted commas. But he was talking about, like, as he's sat and reflected on that, about that he thinks there should be council culture, not cancel culture. So council. So when
Mm,
somebody says, like, we can all make mistakes, right? Like, you and I have the benefit of being able to edit this podcast, but like, yeah, we could say something silly on this podcast that we'd be like, oh,
oh,
and we would go and edit
we've
it
all
out.
said silly shit. Yeah.
Exactly, like social media these days is, especially, like, I feel for our like, I sound like such a boomer, for the younger generation, like around that, they're putting so much stuff out there that sort of goes up on the internet forever. But I thought that was like what made me think about it from a dance studio perspective is, we do always see on lots of the Facebook groups and things like that, people out there complaining about, this parent said this, or this parent didn't do this, or this parent did, like, instead of like always blaming them or like canceling in inverted commas, like, what are we doing to educate them? What are we
Mm,
doing? Because that was his big thing around, like, when somebody does something that you don't want or that's a bit silly, instead of just like tossing them aside and saying you're never going to speak to them again or unfollow them, like, why don't you open up a dialogue with them? why don't you try and like educate both them and you? Like, why did they do that? What could you do to improve? So I think like relating that a lot of the times to how we're dealing with our parents, that, yeah, we can all get a little bit frustrated. That's okay. But it's also super important to reflect, how can we help our parents? And when we get those frustrations with our clients, what can we do to help ensure that that's not happening to the next client or things like that? So helping like counsel them rather than just sort of cancelling them, I thought was something that I just sort
Mm.
of sat and reflected on as I was listening to that.
Yeah, I love that so much. Now, we have little children, and our little girls, as most kids, as are a lot of adults, obsessed with Bluey, right?
Yep.
Uh, Pretty great show. You had the producer of Bluey, was it the producer, the
Yeah,
creator?
one of
What
the
was it?
producers of Bluey. And look, full disclosure, this is one that I completely ended up at by accident, because one of the rooms, one of the sessions, as you do when you go to these events, like I know that our peeps do at Dance Teacher Expo, you go in and you like highlight the session, the speaker from each session that you want to go to. And I looked at the line for the speaker I was going to go to. I'm like, oh gosh, this is super long, 50-50 if I'll get in here. And so I just jumped across to another session. And I didn't know because it just showed the names. It didn't show producer of Bluey. And so I went, and it happened to be not only producer of Bluey, but another couple of really impressive content creators as well.
Hmm.
Um, Guys that were like one of the biggest guys on YouTube Shorts, um, as well as just another like really big. Started out in podcasting and then sort of is also releasing a lot of YouTube content based on that as well. So that was super interesting. There was like, about four Aussies. We were sitting together, gave him a big cheer when he started talking about the ABC, and he was pretty shocked that there was anybody in the room that knew what ABC was. So we got together and had a selfie and a quick chat with him about that afterwards. But just like, yeah, super, super interesting. What the whole panel was talking about there was that when we do our videos, and this was sort of like relating it back to how we're doing our both organic socials and paid socials,
Mm,
is that any video that we're running or any image that we're running on our social media feeds has a really low barrier to exit. Now,
hmm.
the way he explained it was that if you buy, we're just looking at buying Hamilton tickets, right? To go and see Hamilton in Sydney. Now, we're going to obviously drop a fair bit of money on that. We're going to book a restaurant to go. We've got a very high barrier to exit for seeing that show. We're basically
Yeah,
going to go unless something extreme happens, because we've invested so much money into it. We've got the restaurant booking. We've made sure,
yeah. And you're not going
it's
to work out after 10 minutes if you don't,
exactly,
not that we would ever not love Hamilton because we're big
yes,
Hamilton fans, but if you go to a musical, if you go to a theatre, if you go to a show, even a movie, even if it's crap after 5 minutes, you're not going to walk out, right? Like
exactly.
that's
You've
not
got,
what's going to happen because you've paid a lot of money. There's
yeah,
a high barrier to like entry.
exactly. There is a high, yeah, and there's a high barrier to exit, is what they were talking about. Now, the problem
Okay.
with the social media landscape at the moment is that when you're, we all know how quickly we scroll our feeds. If you see
Doing
something
these
that
ones.
yep, like again, doesn't work so much on a podcast, but man, does
Oh
now
yeah, that's
showing
right.
us
It didn't work.
showing us there how we scroll quickly. But yeah, you know how quickly you scroll past something. If it doesn't grab your attention immediately, it's got such a low barrier to exit that you're gone really quickly. And it's one thing
Okay.
that, again, like, because obviously I'm a bit of a nuffy when I sit there and I always think about how these things relate to dance studio owners. And it's something that I see over and over again when I'm having like our one-on-ones and things like that, helping our members in Studio Growth Club, in particular with their Facebook ads and stuff like that, that they get incredible videos shot. Like they might have invested in a professional videographer coming out who give them this awesome content to use. But that first like 1 to 2 seconds of your video is so important to grab people's attention and to make sure that, because that barrier to exit's so low, that you've got to engage them and stop their scroll. So if you have an epic video and you have your studio logo animated for the first 2 seconds, you've lost it.
People get bored, right? Like a
Yep.
logo is not exciting.
It is not exciting. What will draw in people that may be interested in your service, if they're a parent of a preschool person, if they see a video of a happy smiling preschool kid, that's going to get their attention much more than your logo, even if with the best logo animation in the universe. Yeah, you need to
Yeah.
make
Okay.
sure that, because like I said, that barrier to exit is so low. If you want to
Hmm.
stop their swiping and stop their scrolling, you've got to do something that speaks to them, that grabs their attention in that first 1 to 2 seconds before you can even get the point across of how awesome your classes are, about how wonderful
Okay.
your staff are, all those things you want to talk. If you don't grab them in the first 1 to 2 seconds, it's the rest of the message isn't getting to them.
Okay. So something super exciting in that, and I presume that this goes across to the cover photo as well, right? The cover photo on images is so important because yeah, otherwise you just lose them. No one's going to watch anything. Sorry, the cover photo on videos, not on images, but the cover
Yeah,
photo on videos.
yeah, absolutely. It's just that first 1 to 2 seconds, 1 to 2 seconds is just so important.
Absolutely. So that's what you learned from the Bluey guy. He obviously has worked on that and done a very good job of short, because that's what we were talking about, right? Short form content.
Yes. Well, he was,
And
yeah, they're
how
doing
that
all
it's the
kinds. Yeah.
same regardless. Yeah, regardless of
Yep.
if it's a Bluey episode, a YouTube short, an Instagram video, a TikToker, it doesn't really matter. The concept's the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm. Cool. Anyone else you want to share with us before we finish up?
Yeah, like one really interesting guy. His name was Inky Johnson, and like his story was that he was a college football star and had a really very realistic chance of being drafted into the NFL. So big payday, career set up. It's what
Hmm.
he'd been working for, but his entire life. He was a college senior in his last year of college, which meant he was about eight games away from going into that NFL draft and potentially changing his life.
Okay.
And then 8 games before the end of the season, copped a hit, and he'd taken obviously thousands of tackles over his life, but this one ended up paralyzing half of his body, and
Oof.
lost the use of his arm, and that was
Yeah.
obviously his world as he knew it was gone in an instant.
Yeah.
And so obviously, like he was a very very good storyteller, but like he was just super interesting and was talking very much about personal development and growth, and very inspiring. Um, and he had like quite a couple of things that really sort of like hit home and made me listen and thought, oh, okay, like,
Mm.
and like one of the things he talked about, he was very like, very physical in how he spoke and things like that. And I think it's something that dance studio owners sometimes we get caught up in the day to day of the negatives. But like one thing he said was like if you are there doing if you're a business owner, whatever you're doing, like act as if what you do makes a difference because it does.
Hmm.
That was it. Like
And what does
like
he mean by that? Tell me what that means. Like, tell me what
also
that
like
means by that.
also like for like like all the incredible things that dance has brought you as a dancer, as a dance teacher, how
Hmm.
different your life is because of dance. For those that are listening to this, and you're giving that gift to so many students on a daily basis. Yeah, what you do does make a difference. So make sure that you
Yeah.
take time to sit and reflect in that.
And
That
celebrate
yes,
it.
celebrate it and enjoy it, because yes, look, we can't pretend like being a business owner. There's some shit things that go with it too, 100%. But
Absolutely.
if we reflect on the overwhelming majority of what we do, makes a really big difference in so many people's lives. Make sure we sit and celebrate that, and don't let the other stuff outshine that or weigh that
Yeah.
down.
Okay. I love that.
Um, yeah,
So good.
and like a couple of other things he said, like making sure, and this is something that can be so easily done, that you don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but by the seeds that you sow. And I think that's again
Oh,
something,
that's a bit deep.
something that's deep, right? But I think sometimes as business owners, you can get to the end of the day and you can, like we all have those days, right? You get to the end, you're like, what the hell did I do today? I swear I've worked. Like I feel tired and I was at my computer all day. Like, what did I actually get done? Like, and we, again, like we can get a bit down on ourselves, right? But those that are working, and we always talk about working on your business, not in your business. You might have, and that's why it's important to like make sure, like we talk about time blocking lots and things like that. But you might have not have like felt like you've harvested a lot that day. You might have not have felt like that what you've done that day's brought money
Reach
into your
rewards, made you lots
reach,
of money,
yep,
and yeah,
made you lots of money there today. But have you done some tasks that are going to pay off next week, next month, next term, next year? Like,
sowed good seeds.
yeah,
Yeah.
have you put in long-term work into your studio today? Like, so making sure that, again, it's all about sometimes just sitting back and taking those couple of minutes to reflect on things like that can be, I think, super important for us as dance studio owners that get sometimes too caught up in that day-to-day stuff and always running and always feeling like always feel like we're chasing something rather than
I
celebrating our
so
wins.
love that because, we've been talking a lot. I know last week, Beth did a session in Tribe on connections with parents.
Yep.
And a lot of people were talking about, it was just a question like, I just don't have time to do that sort of thing. I don't have time, unfortunately, that's the thing that goes by the wayside. There's connections with the parents. And I totally get it because we're all doing 4,000 things. And
Yep.
making a connection with that parent and, chatting to them for 20 minutes about how school's going for Susie and, like whatever that is, right?
Yep.
Chatting to them for 20 minutes about and that and just building relationships and connections. That's not making you any money today. It's not helping your routine get on stage, next week or anything like that. But is it sowing incredible seeds that this family is going to feel so special and so part of your studio that they're going to stay with you for 15 years? Quite possibly. So
Yep.
you're sowing these incredible seeds rather than getting like that harvest or that, that instant gratification that we've just made money or we've just done this or whatever that is. But it
Absolutely.
can be so, so valuable. I love that lesson.
And I was talking about that with that like similar topic, talking about with someone in one of our one-on-ones last week about how and it's something that you struggled with, is that you went through that, like you went through a bit of a stage where you're like, I just feel like I just get nothing done between from about 3 o'clock. I just feel like at the studio, especially that like 3 till 4, I just feel like I get nothing done
Yeah,
until one day you realized, well, what were you getting done? Because you weren't doing any work in inverted commas. You weren't like
absolutely not.
sitting at your
Yeah.
computer and like pumping out content or doing things like that. But what did you then realize that you were doing that was sowing those long term seeds?
Absolutely, making connections with your staff, making connections with your clients, all of those things,
Yeah,
which built an incredible business moving forward.
yeah. Because especially because we our staff loved working at DS, and so for their three
Hmm.
45 class, like they had to be there 10 minutes early. That's fair, but they would start rolling in from 3 o'clock. And so
Absolutely.
Amanda would sit there and like the first person would come in and she'd have a chat about what they did on the
Their
weekend or
day, yeah,
their
what's
day,
going on?
like how's the parents going, and then the next person would roll in 7 minutes later, and so but having those just those informal check-ins with staff doesn't sometimes doesn't feel like work, but it's just super important connection building because
Mm,
it makes your staff feel more invested. It makes them feel appreciated, and we know that keeping your staff is so much more beneficial and saves you so much money in the long run than
mm,
having to hire new staff all the time.
absolutely. Tell us the quote again.
You don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but the seeds that you sow.
I love that so much.
Yes. And then
So,
the
so good.
last
Oh, sorry, you go.
I was going to say the last thing that I really took from Inky Johnson as well was he's challenging people to think like making sure that you is your personal software updated was the question he asked.
Mm,
And again, just coming back to what we're super passionate about is, are you investing in bettering yourself? Whether that comes from making yourself a better business owner, investing in your own personal health and well-being, whatever that is looking like for you.
going for a walk, eating better, whatever that
Yep.
is. Yeah.
Is your personal software updated? And
Mm,
he made the direct link between software updates on your phone, right? Because whenever sometimes we see that software update on your phone and it feels like a pain in the ass, right? Or like you open Instagram one day and they've done an update. And you're like, oh, just like this is so hard to use. Like we've all had those feelings, right? But at the end of the day,
absolutely.
like if our iPhones were still running on iOS 2 from when iPhone came out back in 2007, like it'd be a shit product and nobody could use it. right?
Hmm.
So sometimes we just got to push through. And after that first like day or two, let's be honest, it's not that long quite often. But after that, those first couple of days of getting used to the new operating system, we do actually realize that it's 10 times better. That putting in
Everything's
that little,
performing better. The Facebook app's working better. The mail app's working better. All of those things. Which does that mean your business is running better because you're putting the work into yourself personally?
absolutely. That's why it stuck with me, mate.
Mm, I love that. I love that so much. So, so good. Any last things that you want to share with us? Great experience. Did you love it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It was very, very different to the first one I went on. I think I've just sort of chatted about that with you. But like I said, I think it's just, again, super important just getting outside, for me personally, getting outside my comfort zone. And like I said, like heading to
Absolutely.
an event without you and Beck, which forced me, and I don't know, I sound like a bit of a globetrotter, but I'm going to another event. It's in the Gold Coast this time, on Thursday in a couple of days here. But just putting yourself in those rooms where where you don't know anybody. And so
Mm,
you just got to turn to the person next to you and have a chat and make those connections. And because, like I said, you never know what's going to come of them. So I think, like, yeah, the biggest thing to take from it is make sure that you're putting yourself in those situations, and go and
mm.
make sure that you're working on making yourself and investing in yourself, because it's just super, super important, and gets you back into your business feeling inspired, right?
Yeah, I love that. Updating your personal software.
Yep, 100%.
So, so good. Thanks for joining us, friends, on the Dance Principles United podcast. It would mean the absolute world to us if you took a second and you wrote a review. If you like our podcast, we really need reviews on our podcast. We're feeling a bit lonely. We haven't had some for a while. So, like, it would mean the world to us if you took a second, jumped on your Apple or your Spotify app and wrote a review. We
And
would
if you
be
have
ever so thankful.
We absolutely wouldn't. If you have any ideas, we had somebody reach out a couple of weeks ago with a couple of things that they would have loved to hear, that they're going to love to hear on the podcast. And we will be absolutely recording some episodes around those as well, because they were great ideas. And the reason we do this podcast, guys, is to help dance studio owners out. And so if you're giving us feedback as to what would help you out, then we would love to record an episode on it.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks, bye.